What's going on, everybody? I'm Primalliquid, and just a quick little update more than anything for you guys on why there's no more Pbird videos and why there hasn't been any for quite a while now. Now, I have, mentioned this must be hundreds of times in comments, other videos, in streams, in the Discord section, just basically everywhere, but I still keep getting the questions, so I figured, you know what, let's just make a dedicated video, which I can, throw into the Pbird video playlist, and then everybody will be able to see what is actually going on with that. Now, if you don't know, Pbird has not been uploaded to this channel in quite a long time, and the reason for that is it was dropped. Like, I dropped Pbird. Now, the reasons why I dropped Pbird, I think many of you will probably agree with, but I'm going to go over them now, and then, we can have a discussion down in the comments if you guys want. I'm more than happy to, discuss these reasons, discuss Pbird in general, and things like that. But, let's start, shall we? So, the actual Pbird itself, well, I say the actual Pbird, Pbird himself, when I initially started speaking to him about doing the mod, he initially described it as, it's just a slight difficulty increase, there's no real grinding needed or anything like that, lots of gameplay changes. I was on board at this point, you know what I mean? I was completely on board, and for the most part, it turned out okay. Now, obviously, being a YouTuber, Pbird was taking a lot of the feedback from me, and he was updating the mod as we went. I mean, I think while I was doing the mod, there must have been about 8 new versions, which is quite a lot considering, realistically, like, I was only doing daily videos for it for like 2 months, basically. So 8 new versions in 2 months, quite a lot, to be fair. And then from there, there were also some versions which I got to play, but the general public did not. If you remember, the very first version I started with was a slightly changed version. The sin scale fight on the boat from Disgaea, for example, had the sin scales using potions on all 3 of them and also on the fin, and it basically made it impossible without haste to actually win that fight, because you just couldn't keep up with the healing, basically. Like, you couldn't out damage their healing. So straight off the bat, you had to grind there. Now, I did speak to Pbird about that, and he agreed that that was a little too much for that early in the game, so he changed it so the healing only affected 1 target instead of all of them, and then that part became, perfectly fine. And from there, you go through the game. There's a difficulty spike in Mi'ihen, which, in my opinion, was a little bit too much just because of the Mi'ihen fangs. But that's like, your first foray into Fantasy Potion, basically. That's where that really comes into play. And it was definitely a rather brutal mechanic to come up against, but still possible, And then it just became, a nice but slightly challenging way through, and all the changes were enjoyable. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the entire story of Pbird minus a couple of areas. Like, Mi'ihen High Road was one of them, and then sort of like Calmlands onwards, the random encounters became a bit too much, but I'll talk more about them in a minute. But yeah, like, the overall changes I enjoyed with Pbird. Like, if you go and rewatch the entire Pbird series, you don't hear me talking shit about Pbird early. Like, I do not talk bad about the mod early on at all. In fact, I praise the mod. So for everybody who's like, oh, like, you hate the mod, you're bad. Like, no, I enjoyed the mod. I did genuinely enjoy the mod. But there are some problems, okay? Now, the mod, as I said, was highlighted as a grind-free mod. Like, you didn't have to grind to beat the game. The problem with that is, in order to beat Yevon, to complete the game, you have to beat Penance. Now, even in the base game, you're not beating Penance without grinding, okay? Because to beat Penance, you have to beat all the Dark Aeons. And in Pbird mod, you can't even touch the Dark Aeons without the Celestial weapons. And you can't get the Celestial weapons without 100%ing the Monster Arena, and that does include beating Nemesis as well. So straight off the bat, you have to grind for the Monster Arena. Like, you're not beating Monster Arena without max stats, basically. Like, hands down, you're not doing it. And then you have to go through the Dark Aeons, which the fights were changed in such a way that they would take anywhere between 1 and 2 hours per Aeon in a single fight. Little too much for me. But then Penance was also, you know, like a 3-hour dance, basically. You make one mistake on Penance, and that's an instant restart. And for me, for like a 3-hour long fight, that's not challenging, that's more endurance, you know what I mean? Can you go 3 hours without making that one single mistake? Which I think is fine. I do think is fine if the fight is shorter. Because for 3 hours, you're going to lose focus. Like, you can't stay focused for 3 hours. That's simply not possible. Like, that's going to really drain you, basically. So to have to stay focused for 3 hours to beat Penance, not a fan of that one. But once you beat Penance, you get an item which you have to use on Yu Yevon to actually kill Yu Yevon and complete the game. Now, straight off the bat, when it comes to grinding, as we all saw, Monster Arena you absolutely have to grind for, but the grinding isn't the problem. The grinding isn't the problem for me. I'm a big grinder. You guys know that. I don't mind grinding. The problem with me is one of the overselling points that Pbird had for the mod. Now, a lot of skills in FF10 are not used. They're just not used because they're kind of pointless, you know? Like, by the time you get them, there's just no need for them. And so what Pbird wanted to do is, he wanted to make these skills usable in more situations. He wanted all the skills in the game to be usable at any situation. But then it got really counterproductive when he actually made it so that, I'm not going to say more than half, but probably about half of the Monster Arena fights, they could only be done one very specific way. You had to target these fights in a very specific way, which removes any sort of, you know, build style. It eliminates some of the characters you can use and so on and so forth. So you're locked into playing it exactly the way Pbird wanted, which he's the mod creator. That's not a problem. Like, if he wants you to play a certain way, that's his choice, you know, it's his mod. That doesn't mean it's going to be enjoyable for people though, because it certainly wasn't for me, and I know it wasn't for a lot of viewers as well. And that's why I dropped the mod, because I wasn't having fun. Like, if you look at the last 10 videos of the mod, I was getting really angry while playing it because the fights were so frustrating. Not difficult, time consuming for no reason. It's like tediousness does not equal difficulty. Tedious is still tedious no matter what, okay? And then from there, it just became a point of, I still have all this to do, you know, I still have all these Monster Arena fights to do, I still have the Dark Aeons to do, I still have Penance to do, and it's like, I was not even burnt out. Like, burnt out's the wrong word. I was sick of it. And for me to say that about something related to FF10, you know that must be bad. Like, that has to be bad, because I love FF10. I always play FF10. I played the game hundreds of times, thousands of times even. Like, I don't get sick of FF10. I love FF10. But for me to get sick of it on Pbird, I think that explains quite a lot, really. But, you know, as I was saying earlier, going through the story, loved it. No problems at all. I think the difficulty spike in Mi'ihen High Road was a little too much, but that was just because of Fantasy Potion. You know, not gonna complain about that. It's your first experience with it. It just throws you into the deep end. You can still get through it, basically. Thunder Plains was another difficulty spike. So if you don't know, Pbird does follow the original story game's difficulty spikes. So it was Mi'ihen High Road, Thunder Plains, Calm Lands, and then Inside Sin. Basically, like these were the 5 main difficulty spikes in the game. Mi'ihen High Road, not too bad. Thunder Plains, that basically just made enemies stronger, and it also removed like Ixion cheese, basically, where you could just get through using nothing but Ixion, because it gave the mobs over attacks. So that's not the end of the world. Like, you can get around that pretty comfortably, to be fair. The Calmlands one, so the Calmlands one wouldn't be that bad if he didn't remove the Baval High Bridge. If you don't know, he made all enemies on Baval High Bridge give 0 EXP, so you had no real way to level on the High Bridge, which I think is a little unfair. But then the Calmlands sort of throws you in the deep end. A lot of status effects, a lot of immunities from mobs, high stats. So it's like, you couldn't really do a lot. You had to sort of, you had to plan for every individual monster. You know what I mean? It's like you had to know all the status effects that could work on them. You had to protect yourself against all the status effects from them. And then you also needed enough health to survive, you needed healing, you needed to out damage them. And it's like all these things combining at once, I think would have been fine in a later area like Omega Ruins. Because at that point, you've got access to everything. In Calmlands, I think it's a little cheap per se, because you're still going through, you don't have all the Aeons, you're still unlocking items, so you don't have access to all the customizers and that. So I think that's one little change that maybe could be looked at. And then it was the same for, Gagazet. Gagazet was a big one. Gagazet was nasty. Gagazet had half the enemies in Gagazet could just straight up one-shot you. And what I will also say is I grinded more than most. Like, in my playthrough, I grinded more than a lot of people who've gone through this mod. Gagazet enemies still one-shot me. So that's definitely a change that's a little too much. But then, before we got to Sin, before we got inside Sin, there was one other problem. And this is my first major, okay, fuck you mod moment, basically. And that was Sanctuary Keeper. Now, wait, no, not Sanctuary Keeper, Spectral Keeper. The one inside Zanakan Temple that you fight just before Unalaska. That fight took me over an hour. Because it had a regen and I was struggling to out-damage that regen. Because I was already capped on the grids, because if you don't know, you can only complete the individual grid. You don't have the ability to unlock, like, the level 4 nodes to move to other people's grids. You can't get teleport spheres or warp spheres or anything like that to move over to other grids. So you're sort of locked at this level of power. You can't get stronger. And then, for Sanctuary Keeper to take that long, because, you can't really out-damage the healing, I was more angry at the fact that okay, if this was Monster Arena, that's fine, that's post game, you know what I mean. You shouldn't have what is effectively a gate boss, because that's all Spectral is. He is a door boss to Unalaska, like he's just a door boss. That's all. For him to take so long was a kick in the teeth, because you have Unalaska straight after. Now, Unalaska was difficult, don't get me wrong. Unalaska was a difficult fight, but it didn't take anywhere near as long as Spectral Keeper. And that's where I first really got annoyed at the mod, and I think a lot of people picked up on that as well, because I know, like, I ended up asking the question, do you guys agree with me, or do you disagree with, like, what I said about that fight? And there were definitely a few people who disagreed, for sure, but a lot of people did agree with, my take on that fight, that it did take too long for what is a door boss. But then, fast forward on, it was sort of downhill from there, it was just downhill. Every boss after that point was just getting worse and worse and worse. Honestly, the outside sin, no problem. Broska's Final Aeon, which me and a lot of other people who have done the mod just consider Broska's Final Aeon to be the final boss. If you can beat Broska's Final Aeon in Pbird, you've completed the mod as far as we're concerned. Because from that point onwards, it then becomes just non-stop grinding for 200 hours. You have to go through the Monster Arena, you have to go through the Dark Aeons, you have to do Penance, all these before you can do Yevon. And when it comes to the Monster Arena, it's like, you have to stat max. Like, hands down, you are not doing the Monster Arena without stat maxing. The only problem is you can't stat max in any order you want, because you have to stat max in the exact order that Pbird lets you, basically. Because you can't kill all the monsters straight off the bat. You can't even cheese them. It's like you have to start off from, like, you have to go through the list, finding the one that you can beat that, and then max your stats, like max that stat out completely. Then you move on to the second fight, and then you max that stat out. And the process just becomes really annoying, really tedious, because even in the original FF10, maxing your stats takes a bit of time, and that's where you're just demolishing the monsters, you know what I mean? That's where you are demolishing the fights. In Pbird, the fights were taking anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes at a time. That's not even counting the luck stat. Luck took way too long, basically. And that's why, even me, for the first time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to beat this fight. I'm going to mod my stats. Like, I'm not putting the time investment in. I'm not going to spend 10 to 20 hours per stat. Because you got to think, there's like 8 stats in FF10. That's over 100 hours just to max a stat. That's not counting HP that needs like 60 hours plus. That's not counting luck, which needs, you know, God knows how much time. It's like, it is ridiculous the amount of time just to max your stats. Then you have to go through the fights, which even with max stats, still can one-shot you no problem. Because you have to go through the individual mechanics, and there's one fight in particular that really stands out to me, which is you're fighting 3 mobs. There's only one way to beat them. Only one way. You have to poison one of them, you have to doom one of them, and then you have to inflict zombie and then regen on one of them. You can't damage them with attacks, you can't damage them with magic. Now, this fight, I think a lot of people will remember, because it basically devolved into one thing and one thing only. I would inflict the statuses, and then I would sit there for 70 turns, throwing out like a mega elixir when I needed to heal. Because that's all you can do. You have to inflict the statuses, and then you have to sit there wasting turns for like 20 minutes. That's not fun. I don't care who you are, I don't care what you say. Wasting 20 minutes just slowly waiting for the mob to die due to a status effect, that's not fun. Okay? No. I do not agree. There's nothing fun about that. That is pure tediousness. And it's just annoying and frustrating. But the worst part is, that wasn't the only fight like that. There was always the one monster in fights that had some bullshit mechanic that you would have to figure out, and then you'd have to either create entire new gear sets to counter, or you would have to just waste a bunch of time in the fight, basically. You know, and it's like, even if you had to create new gear, you'd have to go get the items, you'd have to get the guild for bribes, and it just becomes a massive time sink. And at that point, like, I have no problem wasting my time with time sinks. You guys know this. Look at the Overpowered series. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the level of tediousness that it makes. Because all these status effects that you're being hit with bypass ribbon. The one effect in the game that takes 99 dark matters to get, which are still annoying in the mod to get. They are easier than the OG to get. Yes, I will give Pbird credit for that. They are easier to get. There's no point in getting them, because 99% of the shit just goes through ribbon. Why have an ability that does not work? It's pointless. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. The hardest ability to get in the game does not work. It does not do what it is supposed to do. Like, most of the Monster Arena mobs have status effects that go through ribbon. And at that point, I was pissed. Because I gave up getting 2 sets of break damage limit so I could get ribbon instead. And because of that, that took my grind speed from, you know, up here all the way down here. Because rather than doing, you know, like 99,000 damage, I'm doing 10,000 damage. That's 10 times less damage per hit. So the fights just took forever just because of that. Now, I think ribbon should be a trade-off. It makes the fights slower because you don't have break damage limit, but it protects you against the status ailments. Instead, no, it doesn't protect you against the status ailments, it just makes the fights slower. The hardest ability to get in the game actually fucks you up. It slows you down, it eliminates an entire slot in your armor, which could be better used for something else. And that, for me, was basically the final nail in the coffin, you know? Like, I'd already gone through so much frustration with the Monster Arena. I'd gone through so many bullshit fights. And then I finally got ribbon on everybody. And that was it then. Just, like, stats effect, stats effect, stats effect. And I'm just sitting here like, what is the point in ribbon? I just wasted all that time. What is the point in ribbon? It's useless. You know what I mean? So it's like, that it's frustrating. It was a level of frustration that, like, at that point, I'd never experienced from a game. I'm a very chill gamer. Like, I'm a very chill gamer. Other than playing golfing over it. Stream viewers will know what I'm on about there. But no, I'm a very chill gamer. So, for that to anger me so much, I knew that, one, me getting so angry on stream, obviously, you know, it means I'm not having fun. It portrays me in a bad light, so to speak. But then, if you, as a viewer, are just listening to me rage for 30, 40, 50 minutes at a time, it's not going to be enjoyable for you guys either. So at that point, I was like, okay, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm just going to cut my losses. I'm not going to waste my time on this shit anymore. We're going to move over to something that I will enjoy more and something that you will enjoy more. And that's why I just dropped Pbird. There will never be another Pbird video on this channel, okay? Maybe if there's, you know, like a huge mega update for Pbird, maybe I'll go through the story again and I'll just stop after Broska's final Aeon. There will not be any continuation to the current series, okay? No more Pbird videos for the Monster Arena, no Dark Aeons, no Penance. Like, I'm not wasting my time. I am not letting that level of frustration get to me. Because I don't want it to ruin my love of FF10. I love FF10. I'm not letting this mod get in the way of that. But, you know what? I think that's going to be enough for this rant, guys. As I say, you know, I needed to just get a video out there, clear the air up. And hopefully now, I won't get 10 plus questions a day asking, like, where's Pbird? What's going on with Pbird? So yeah, I know it's been a long time. I should have made this video sooner. I'm sorry for that, but there you go. That is my reasoning for why I've not done any Pbird videos in a very long time, and why there's also going to be no more Pbird videos in a very long time. But though, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this little rant. If you have, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. And of course, leave a comment down below. I'm happy to have a discussion with you guys about all of this stuff. So, you know, we can have a nice little back and forth. Maybe you guys have an opinion that I didn't bring up, and we can talk about that, you know? And of course, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more content. As always though, everybody, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.